All right. Good evening and welcome to the September 28th Economic Development Meeting. I'm Alderman Braithwaite, the chair. We have quorum. Is there approval to pass the July 25th minute meetings?
So moved.
It's been properly moved and seconded.
Second.
Or is there a second? It's been properly moved and seconded. Any questions, comments, edits? Seeing none, all those in favor of passing the July 25th meetings, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed. All right. Item 3, items for consideration. Number A is 2222 Oakton Recycling Center. Hopefully you've all had an opportunity to read the information in your packets, and there's also a presentation deck for both properties in front of you. Mr. Zalmazak.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm not sure if you wanted to lead with public comment or we want to do the presentations first for this. Or
You know what, I guess we can go ahead and take the comments. And it looks like everyone here is signed up for 2222 Oakton, so I'm going to call the first 4 names. If you can go ahead and get ready, starting with Scott Prestangen, followed by Thomas Altman, Gary Peterson, Lisa Weinfield, Matt Ryan, Bill Galder, close enough? Glader, thank you. Completely butchered that. Marie, and then Doreen Price. I'm going to give you all 3 minutes apiece, and if you agree with a person ahead of you and you just want to say that, we're okay with that also. All right, Scott, let's go. Okay. Not a worry. We'll keep on moving. Thomas? Okay. Thank you. Gary?
Hi, I'm Gary Peterson. I live in Evanston. From my perspective, it's really more financial. I think it's great the climbing wall place wants to come in, but from a tax perspective and income to Evanston, while they would both pay property taxes, presumably, a Peckish Pig scenario would also pay sales tax that would vastly outweigh or exceed what a climbing wall would do. So just from a pure dollar perspective to the taxpayers, I would think Peckish Pig would be a far superior alternative, and I think it's a nice venue that they're doing also. Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa Winfield?
I'm coming at it more from a community perspective. I'm a mom in Evanston, and I spend my life at James Park. And I think it would be great to have a gathering place where people could kind of meet, and it could become a community center. A couple years ago, I was in Paris, and I was at this great little cafe that was on like a side street across from a park. And it was obviously like the gathering place for the neighborhood where everybody, all the families in the neighborhood met, the kids played in the park, they came over and ate, and I think it would be really cool for Evanston to have something like that. So,
Right. Thank you so much for your comments, Lisa. Matt?
Hi, good evening. Matt Ryan, Evanston resident, also farm manager of the Talking Farm. And so from a partnership angle, we are very thrilled about this potential with Peckish Pig to expand. We currently sell produce, organic produce, to a lot of Evanston businesses. And so this would be another expansion of that project, of those partnerships. There could be job training. So this, for us, from a non-for-profit status that has a big reach in Skokie and Evanston, we're thrilled about this potential partnership. So thank you.
Thank you. Bill?
I'm Bill Glader, and I live in Evanston, and I'm a member of the Evanston Lighthouse Rotary Club, and we're often in search of venues for fundraisers. And I can tell you that Evanston could really use another large venue, for fundraising and similar events like that. And Peckish Pig would be a great choice for that. And they've also been really generous with the community. They've been very generous with our club and helping us raise money. So they've been a real kind of anchor in the community. So I'm in favor of Peckish Pig.
Thank you. Marie?
Hello. My name's Mari. Okay.
Mari Horowitz, and I work at Connections for the Homeless as a case manager. Not only do I love working at Evanston, but I have family that have lived here for many years. I would love to live here too, but know that it wouldn't be possible as I already pay half of my income to rent in Rogers Park in Chicago, and know it would be difficult to find anything cheaper here. As part of my job, I'm helping to run an affordable housing consumer advocacy group made up of low-income Evanstonians who live in or need affordable housing. Their focus is to generate ideas and interests in new affordable housing development for people with very low incomes. Tonight, I'm speaking on behalf of this group. We learned after the submission deadline had passed that the City of Evanston had solicited proposals for use of the city-owned property at 2222 Oakton, which was once the Evanston Recycling Center. We know that this site is zoned for industrial use. However, we believe it is potentially an ideal location for a mixed-use development that includes affordable residential units for low-income families and individuals. It's on a bus line near grocery stores, close to James Park, and close to schools. Additionally, because it is not in the middle of an already established residential neighborhood, we hope that it will be less likely to face not in my backyard opposition than other recent developments. Given that affordable housing is one of the City of Evanston's priorities, we ask that the request for proposal process be reopened in order to accept proposals from affordable housing developers, and that if enough interest is shown by developers, the city consider changing the zoning and make affordable housing a priority. Furthermore, we believe that all city-owned properties should be evaluated as potential sites for new affordable housing. No city-owned property should be developed for any purpose without first being considered as an affordable housing site. We recognize that we are bringing this issue up late in the RFP process. We are aware that we were not the intended audience for this RFP and that the city likely did not have affordable housing on its radar as it was developing the RFP. However, that is the very problem we are asking the city to address. We hope that in the future, developers of affordable housing will be notified every time there's a city property up for development. We ask that in the case of 2222 Oakton, the city consider putting affordable housing back on its radar and give developers of affordable housing a chance to submit proposals. Thank you.
Thank you. Doreen Price.
I'm here as a homeowner, a resident of Evanston of the same home for 35 years. And as an individual, I'd like to speak to the fact that others in my community also have similar issues to people like me who have lived and are now seniors in Evanston for a long time. There are things that are coming up that transparency has really helped the discussion between and partnership of building activities with the residents and the city council. And I commend you for how far we've gone so far. But I also think that we need to speed it up and have more transparency in terms of times of notification, even with regard to simple things as getting letters in the mail asking a response to, say, someone's trying to do a permit or deviation or a permit or whatever, and it's 2 weeks and you don't have that much time in your whole lifetime to learn to be an engineer and other things, and you don't have the resources that rich people might have, or people who have a little bit more money. So I'm asking that for the people like me who are being challenged financially, meaning that they can do the research, they just need the time, or trying to find people to help them would be kind of cool if the city arranged for that sort of intervention to help seniors like me, and also to ease the burden in terms of the The social support services would be kind of cool too, because it is sort of anxiety-prone process for someone who's trying to be a good citizen. If you're not, then it's not an anxiety-prone process, but if you are, it really is. I would like to also speak that initially the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse was cited for that, and they were within 1 day, I think, of taking over that spot before it became the other place that has now left. And they would have been there for a good several months by now had you accepted them. I really would like you to reconsider Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse and extend, like you did originally, to the combination of profits and nonprofits, because the nonprofit sector helps us with the social services and the like that we don't get if we're going to cut our budget on social services. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing no additional speakers, just to members of the committee, I think we'll take the applicants in order that they appear in the packet. And is everyone all right with 10 minutes per applicant for presentation?
That's fine.
All right. Do you want to tee this up? Thank you.
All right, thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. So obviously there are two proposals before you this evening. First Ascent, which has an offer to purchase the building. That's by Clark Street Real Estate. First Ascent would be the tenant. And then Peckish Pig is proposing Palm House, which starts off as an event space and eventually becomes an event space and food hall, and amongst other things, including an incubator. Both proposals were very complete. Staff went through an interview process in addition to reviewing the proposals. We did a scoring system. First Ascent scored 86 on average, with Palm House coming in close at 68. Both have strong qualities. They fill a market need. We hear a lot about event spaces. We hear a lot from parents who are tired of driving to Niles or other places to take their kids to do events, jump zone, things like that. And as outlined in the staff report, staff believes that First Ascent is better capitalized and more realistic in terms of the renovation costs. Palm House, Peckish Pig has a proven ability to deliver. They're scrappy. It's a local established network. We all know them very well. We can trust them. So as Chairman Braithwaite indicated, we're going to give each group hopefully 10 minutes to present. I'd like to try to hold them to that. I know it's hard to do.
I got a stopwatch in front of me.
Thank you. And we'll have a discussion afterwards, hopefully questions and answers. And what our recommendation, or what we're seeking from the committee tonight, is that this committee recommended the City Council proceeding with one of the entities. And then we would, at that point, we would bring a draft term sheet to the City Council that would kind of outline the terms, and we would seek city manager authority to negotiate. So with that, I'll kick it off. I believe First Ascent was first in the packet, so I mean.
Sure. How many folks do you guys have with your group? Two? Come on up. And so just as you're walking, obviously, we've had an opportunity to read through the packet. So if you want to just hit your highlights, and then we'll open it up to committee.
Alderman Braithwaite.
Yes.
I have my light on.
Oh, I'm sorry, Alderman Wright. Go ahead.
Out of respect for both
Sure.
presenters, I mean, it took me hours to read through all of the information and to get a handle on what both of them were presenting. And I'm sure it took them many more hours to put it together. I know our staff has been working on this. I think it's insulting to ask them to, and this committee had nothing to do with asking them to present in 10 minutes.
Sure.
Could we be a little more generous in allowing their presentations? I mean, I'm sure you gentlemen would like a few more minutes. And I don't know, I'm not speaking for Peckish, but it seems to me that I would like to hear more than 10 minutes. I don't know about the committee, maybe everybody's in a rush to get out of here, but 10 minutes just seems too short.
And if I can respond, I started my comments by sharing that the information was laid out very well in the packet, and I thought it would be more to the advantage of the committee and those in the public to benefit from the questions that are asked.
Sure.
It is in your ward, so, respectfully, if you'd like to recommend additional time, either way,
I just think that if they're going to take 14 minutes or 13 minutes, we shouldn't blow a whistle after 10 minutes. That's all
Fair
I'm
enough.
saying.
Fair enough. Gentlemen, we'd
That's
like to
okay
get
with
started,
us.
and if you need additional time.
Sure.
And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of questions afterwards.
Wonderful.
All right.
Good evening. My name is Andy Stein with Clark Street Real Estate, and with me is John Shepard from First Ascent. We are thrilled to be before you tonight. As you may or may not know, we previously submitted an application, a proposal for you in 2015, and since that time have been working with First Ascent to find the ideal location in Evanston. So without further ado, let's start the presentation, and we'll walk through a little bit about who First Ascent is, which I'll turn the presentation over to John and tell you a little then about who Clark Street is, and we'll get into the proposal.
Sure. And hi, he mentioned my name is John Shepard. I'm the Business Development Director for First Ascent, so that means that I work on looking at new locations. And I'll get into introducing us as a company a little later, but the first thing I think I should start with is what is rock climbing? And you can obviously, if you can back up one slide, just see from the picture, thank you. So rock climbing is, I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. We're starting to hear it a little bit about it more in the news and see it in magazines and things. It's actually the nation's fastest growing sport right now, but it's not a new fad. I mean, climbing has been around for centuries, and indoor climbing has been around for decades. It's been very popular over Europe, and on the West and East Coast, it's also been very popular, and it's actually appearing in the Olympics in 2020. So I think it's kind of an interesting note that this sport has some staying power. It's been around for a long time, but it is new to the Midwest. And we're seeing, we as a company, First Ascent opened in 2015, and we've seen a lot of growth, so much so that since we opened, we've just opened our 4th location in downtown in Block 37 because there's a lot of interest in growth in the sport here in Chicago. What you can see from the picture is climbing is, we create indoor cliffs, essentially, that are visually appealing and physically appealing and fun to climb for both adults and youth. And as we like to say, our customers range anywhere from 5 to 75. We have regular members who come in who are in their 70s, and we have hundreds and hundreds of youth who come in on a weekly basis to climb at the gym. And I think along those lines, I'd also like to address the fact that when I say there's misconceptions about climbing, I think a lot of people think, oh, that's like, and it's like, an extreme sport, like skateboarding or snowboarding or something like that. I'm going to get hurt doing it. Climbing's as natural as walking. I mean, if any of you have ever had children, you know that one of the first things they do, maybe even before walking, is climbing. They climb all over furniture, they can hold themselves up, and climbing is a very natural thing to do. It's great exercise, and it's actually very low impact, which is why it appeals to people, both young and old. And we make it visually interesting and fun, and we make a great community center out of our spaces, which I'll get into a little bit later. After introducing climbing, I just want to say a little bit about who we are. Who is First Ascent? We are a locally owned, locally operated company. We were started in 2015. We were started by my partner Joe and 2 other founders, rock climbers. And we saw the need to open a climbing gym in Chicago. There really was not anything. And us and a group of local investors who are almost entirely people in Chicago who are interested in climbing or whose children climb or who knew about it helped us open our first gym, and we've opened 3 since then. Our mission as a company is to grow and serve Chicago's vibrant climbing community. And we have thousands of members, over 4,000 throughout the city of Chicago. And as you can see up here, we've noted our 4 locations. We have locations in pretty unique and diverse markets throughout Chicago. So we have a location in Avondale, which is the one that is most similar to the one we'd be building in Evanston. So if you have any curiosity to see what this might look like, you could visit our Avondale facility, which is a 25,000 square foot climbing facility with 60-foot tall rope climbing. Then the other 3 facilities, we have one located in Uptown, one in Humboldt Park, and one downtown, the most recent one in a mall, actually in Block 37. The last 3 locations are climbing gyms that are 18,000 square feet each, and they are more of like satellite locations with more of a neighborhood focus, whereas the Avondale one is kind of a center that draws people from as much as an hour away, which is a similar thing that we would expect for the Evanston climbing gym. You'll see at the bottom of this slide the kind of visits that we expect to see per day. And at Avondale, we see an average of 400 people per day and expect to grow to a 750 person a day stabilized average use per day. And at the other gyms, we see between 200 and 250 per day. Now, what that means for Evanston and what that means for this location is that we expect to be drawing similar numbers. I think in Evanston, we're projecting around 300 people per day to be using the climbing gym. And some of those people, a lot of them will be Evanston residents, but a lot of them will be people visiting from other neighborhoods, from the suburbs. And those are people that work out an appetite, find kind of new friends in the community center of the climbing gym, and then go out and frequent local businesses and use local restaurants and go to local brew pubs. It's kind of one unique thing about climbing as a fitness destination is that we're not just a gym where people put on their headphones and walk on a treadmill for a half hour and then hit the road. It's kind of a fun social scene where you'll see that people hang out there 3-4 days a week. And it's you know, I mentioned this later in the presentation, but there was a sociologist who recently talked about people always need a third place, you know, their home and their work, and then a third place to hang out. And for a lot of our customers, First Ascent is a third place. It is a place where they get fitness. We actually have co-working space where people can work on their computer and get a few chores done before they head home. And then we also have climbing, which is a, you know, like I mentioned, a natural, fun, like body weight fitness activity. But each of our locations also includes yoga, and we have over 35 classes per week of yoga that is included in the membership price. And we also have over 30 fitness classes per week, where we have like teaching people to weight lift. We have classes on flexibility. We have classes on balance. We have PTs giving classes on keeping your shoulders healthy, etc. So we're a full-service fitness gym with personal training, but our main product is rock climbing. And rock climbing, I think, is any of you know, would be, you know, unique to this location, but it would also be, I think, very well suited for a city like Evanston, where everyone's so, you know, active and riding their bikes all Saturday long up and down Sheridan Avenue, and that doesn't have anything like this, especially to take advantage of that active the residents here in the winter. So we're an indoor activity that can serve people year round. Before I go any further, I know Andy wanted to talk a little bit about.
So real briefly, so Clark Street is a fully integrated, internally capitalized real estate development company based in Chicago. We do all sorts of projects, from single-tenant build-to-suits, from Capital Grill to DaVita Dialysis, to larger, more complicated public-private partnerships like it's shown in the upper left-hand corner in downtown Oak Park. It's a project called the Emerson with a ground floor at Target, similar to what's found in Sherman Plaza, 270 luxury apartments and a 418-car parking garage. That was a public-private partnership with the Village of Oak Park. So all this goes to show kind of the breadth and depth of experience and capabilities we have. And then locally, just around the corner, we repurposed the old General Automation building at Oakton and McCormick to Floor & Decor. And then we were also involved in the redevelopment of several industrial buildings in Skokie as well to create TUI Marketplace, which is the Walmart Jollibee Acre Shopping Center. So, go ahead. So our proposal that we have put forward in the presentation is to purchase the property from the city of Evanston for $1 million. What Clark Street's role in the project would be the acquisition, development, construction, entitlement, and financing of the project, while we would bring in and enter into a long-term lease with First Ascent as the operator for the facility. We believe that bringing kind of both best in class in real estate and in climbing will really create a synergistic effect and create a valuable commodity for the Evanston community.
You know, I'm going to just go really quickly through this because I think the latter slides are a little more illustrative of what like the unique thing that First Ascent would bring. But just to give you a quick overview of the operations plan. So First Ascent's facilities, we open early. We open at 6 and we run late till 11 p.m. We do that because we offer, like I said, both full fitness offerings. We have morning boot camp classes, and then people hang out and climb till late at night. They climb, like I imagine college students could be seen climbing late, along with young professionals. We have a lot of young professionals and families that climb at the gym, and I think one interesting thing to note about rock climbing is, like I mentioned, it's not something just like an extreme sport. It's also not something just for kids. It's not like a trampoline park where parents might just drop the kids off and leave, but we expect to see, out of the 300 visitors a day at all of our existing locations, we have a lot of families that come in and actually climb and hang out together, which is kind of unique to have an activity where both the parents can climb or take a yoga class or a fitness class, and the kids can climb and all be in the same facility and all be having fun together and not need to be some of the people just sitting there watching. So I think that's kind of unique. I don't think, because everyone's already reviewed the materials, I don't think I need to get into
So this is a concept rendering of what the facility could initially look like.
And maybe just so you guys are pacing yourself,
Yep.
we're right at that
Yep, I know
10-minute mark.
hustling.
Yeah, no rush, no rush. Yeah, no rush, just let you know.
I'm sorry. Thank you for letting us know. So this is initial concept of what we would look to do to the building. There needs to be a lot more work put into this, but this is initial concept of what it could potentially look like.
This is actually a quick video of a facility that we are actually building in Arlington Heights currently. We'll just do just a couple seconds of it to show you a fly through of the facility. So you'll see we have the co-working and meeting space and the cafe space where people kind of bring in food and hang out. We've actually done a lot of events with local restaurants in the space, so I imagine the partner with the restaurant group here to do food nights and things like the restaurant. We have partnerships with several local restaurants in Chicago, which you'll see in the letters of support in the back of the presentation, where we regularly bring them in and have food nights where we buy food for our customers, and then they can eat and climb and socialize together.
So that gives you a sense of what a facility would look like inside. The site plan that we've included for this presentation is reusing the existing building, reworking the parking lot to enable 45 parking spaces. Currently, it's zoned I-2. Commercial indoor recreation is actually a special use in I-2, and we believe, if I interpreted the City of Evanston parking code, we have to provide 2 spaces for every 1,000 square feet, so we'd be required to have 40 spaces. We have a little extra here. One of the things that we'd like to have conversations further with the City of Evanston is how ultimately this could be integrated into the redevelopment of the parking lot of the animal shelter that is adjacent to the west, and that's something that we would want to do. Otherwise, we would keep the existing access points the same. As we've talked about our proposal, we propose to buy the property for $1 million, put another $1 million to $1.5 million in what we would call the base building and site work. Joe and John would then invest probably another $750,000 into the FF&E, the walls, the furniture, everything else, and then we'd have soft costs related to it. So ultimately, we would envision the project costing anywhere from $3.25 to $3.75 million. So just about on average, about $250 a foot. So not a small investment into the existing building.
And what are your small costs, by the way?
Soft costs would be architecture and engineering, legal, interest
services.
expense,
Got it.
all the things that
Professional services,
all the
okay.
professionals that you
Yep.
go to.
Yep.
So
Thanks.
the schedule, it was obviously also in the presentation, but if selected, we think the critical time would be in early 19, working through a redevelopment agreement with the city, going through our due diligence. There's a lot of questions based off the limited information the city had. One of those questions is stormwater detention going to be required for the redevelopment of the site? Right now, it's a question mark because of the way the code reads in the city of Evanston, because it would potentially become a property that would go on the tax rolls. And then obviously approval of the city, approval of the redevelopment agreement. We would spend the next summer, working through the design and construction of the plans, and then ultimately start construction towards the end of next year for a grand opening in the summer of 2020. So I'll turn the presentation back over to John, who will talk about the engagement with the community.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. I think these points are some of the most unique points about First Ascent and about rock climbing, bringing that to Evanston, and that is that, I mentioned this earlier, but rock climbing is not just a fitness gym. First Ascent is not just a fitness gym. We really do create a third place where a lot of members, our average member comes in 3 times per week, and one other thing to note that's interesting, rock climbing is not, our gyms are not just for members. So we have a lot of customers who come in on a membership basis who make us the regular workout facility where we have yoga and fitness and rock climbing. But then rock climbing, because of its unique nature, I mean, I know you just got a brief glimpse of the walls, but they're 50 feet tall and they're appealing and they're really exciting to climb, and people come from all over within an hour to have corporate events, to have parties, to have birthday parties, to do team building events with their workplace. So we have a lot of people that use this space as a community center and as a team building place, and I think that makes it really unique because we're not just a fitness gym, just like some of the existing fitness gyms. We actually, because of the large carnivorous feel of the place and the kind of inspiring walls, it's a great place to hold events, and we have a lot of people doing that. I think one thing to note is that climbing is accessible to all. We do a lot of events aimed at our local community. So we appeal to like all different kinds of economic backgrounds. We appeal to like people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds. To give an example, in Humboldt Park, the neighborhood is mostly Puerto Rican, and we held a huge fundraiser after the hurricane and raised thousands of dollars. And a lot of members actually brought a bunch of other goods to donate in terms of survival goods and camping goods and lights and things like that, and we donated to the hurricane relief effort. And on top of that, we also have very engaged members. Our members do beach cleanup days regularly during the summer, where we send about 200 people out to Lake Michigan to clean up the Montrose Beach and Foster Avenue Beach. And we have a very engaged community. So we really are a community gathering place where people not just work out, but they hang out together. And I think this is just kind of a fun anecdote that I mentioned in the meeting earlier with Alderman Rainey, but now that we're revitalizing the area around Avondale, specifically our first gym, we bring so many customers in that then climb and then go hang out after to go out to get a beer or a burger or a drink after climbing. That there's a lot of local restaurants where we actually go in, and a lot of times they know who we are, and sometimes they comp us dinner or comp us a drink because they're like, you've brought so many hundreds of more people here after you've opened that you really like brought our restaurants to life. And I think that we would certainly expect to see similar things here because we'd be drawing people from surrounding neighborhoods and also people from Evanston itself.
And I think lastly, as to the benefit, I mean, what better synergy do you have with James Park and the Quad? I mean, you've now really got all seasons parks and recreation. If this is able to happen, you'd work with and be partners with the community garden adjacent to it. So yep. I think this is really what Joe and John have created is really a place of community, and they imbibe the community that they are in right now. So I know we're going way over time, so we'll wrap it up very quickly. So I think we talked about the benefits. The economic benefits outside of the purchase price would be obviously the property would go back on the tax rolls. We envision that there would be over $100,000 on an annual basis in taxes generated on it. There is not a tremendous amount of sales tax generated. There is retail sales that comes in the form of merchandise and small food items that are be purchased, but it is not something that is critical to their business ultimately. And then lastly,
but to add to that though, like it's hard to measure this, but we just by word of mouth and by anecdotes and from all the letters of support you'd see at the back of the presentation, we are increasing sales tax in all of the other local businesses around us. And I think that's kind of hard for us to measure, and we can't speak to that specifically, but we know from word of mouth and from the letters of support that other local restaurants, you'll see in the back of the presentation, have come out and said, like, this has been really a great having First Ascent there, partnering with us and bringing them in have us bringing their food into events and advertising for them as well.
So we really appreciate your time. We're happy to answer any questions that you might have.
So just a quick question. Is there any desire to hear the second group, then open up to questions, or do you want to take them one group at a time? Any thought? Yeah, I thought the same thing. Then just open it up, and then we'll have time to. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Next group.
Hi,
Hi, guys. Thank you, Economic Development Committee, for your time tonight and also consideration of our proposal for the reimagination and reuse of the Evanston Recycling Center. As you guys can see in the first page of the packet below, one quote from the RFQ really resonated with us as we worked through our presentation this evening, and it's something that I wanted to read out loud and have you all keep in mind as we talked about this presentation going forward. The City of Evanston is seeking a qualified individual operator or team to bring an exciting and destination-oriented use to Evanston's Oakton corridor. The city's goal for this property is to be utilized for its highest and best use that will offer amenity options for visitors and residents of Evanston that include families, baby boomers, and college-age students alike. We feel like we have something for all of those groups, and we just wanted you to keep that in mind as we move through this presentation. A little bit about us. Palm House Productions, many of you know myself and Debbie and Yannick, who are sitting back there below, as members who have been before this committee and before City Council in 2013, 2012, with the Peckish Pig. In 2013, we were approached and entered into a deal with the City of Evanston to take over 5 underutilized, underserved, underperforming storefronts that were either vacant or not producing tax at the time. Since then, we opened a restaurant, which I've seen many of your faces at before, and feel as though we've been a success both for Evanston and for the Howard Street corridor that we exist in. You can skip through the next few pages if you feel like you know us a lot. It's myself, I was the general manager for the last 4.5 years at Peckish Pig. Grossed over $2.3 million sales annually last year. We a staff of over 38. Amongst other things. Debbie, many of you know her more than you know me from both the Peckish Pig prior to that, ownership of the Celtic Knot for 8 years, long-term Evanston resident, also chef at Tommy Nevin's Pub back when that was still a thing that existed. And then most recently, Yannick, who is our bar manager at Peckish and runs our beverage program. Since our collaboration with the City of Evanston in 2012, we have grossed over $9 million in sales in the 4.5 years we've been open. From that, we paid over $100,000 in property taxes to the City of Evanston, over $170,000 in liquor tax to the City of Evanston, as well as over $800,000 in sales tax, which we feel is, a return on investment as what the city put into that building is quite a return on investment there. I know at the time when we opened, there was a lot of naysayers about the project, including I have a quote from you in here as far as, people hoped that we would prove them wrong, and I genuinely feel like we did. This project, we are hoping, will be the same case. A study of events at Peckish. Not only were people worried about going to dinner at Peckish, people were worried about having weddings at Peckish. Who was going to come there for an event? Who's going to come there for a bar mitzvah, for a birthday party? In last year alone, we did over 67 events, over $250,000 in just event sales alone. And that's running from 200-person weddings, 20-person rehearsal dinners, bar mitzvahs, birthdays, baby showers, and in between. Since 2014, we've done over $700,000 in private events, with the average event ranging anywhere from $1,600 to $18,000 in a single day. The reason I reference this is because we, as an existing Evanston business, understand the need for event venue space in Evanston. In the last month alone, we've turned away 12 events because we were either too small or we were already booked on that date. People who more than likely would go outside of Evanston to find a venue of the same size. Amongst private events, weddings, bar mitzvahs, all of that, as long-term Evanston residents, we have also supported a lot of Evanston programs as well from Beacon Academy. Renee Ruffin couldn't be here tonight. She did say she forwarded an email to all of you and with her support. Matt from Talking Farms, who you heard from earlier, some people from Rotary, and even with a note to the Evanston Rebuilding Warehouse. We have supported them in the past as well.
YOU, First Bank and Trust, really enrooted in Evanston-based businesses, not only providing something for people in an event space, but also giving back to the community at large as residents for a long time. As far as events go, we all kind of know weddings are the highest price tag there. The Chicagoland area is the 5th highest market for weddings in the country. The average wedding cost is $34,000. And that is food, beverage, venue rental, all taxable income. And these photos are existing photos of events that we have done prior at Peckish, weddings, you know, and the like. Moving into how this would affect the new building space. And I'm just going to mention a little quick before I hand it over to our construction and design team. Evanston has traditional event venues. There is a lot of event venues that already exist in Evanston, Crystal Ballroom, Women's Club, things like that, that are a bit more traditional. At the max, I think Hilton Orrington currently is the max that we can hold at 500. But other than that, as far as unique event venues, modern event venues, something more industrial, that is the reason that we see a lot of our bookings at Peckish Big. They don't want a traditional banquet. They don't want something with tablecloths. And we feel like there is a market here for that that is not currently being filled. In addition to the industrial space that already exists within this structure, one that we feel like lends itself really, really well to this open space and steel and masonry project. The background of the green space is a beautiful addition to looking out windows and seeing green space in the background, and also something different for the space that isn't the you know, parks and recreation that already exists there. I'm going to touch on it a little bit later, but the food hall side will come a bit later, which is why I wanted to let the team talk about the first phase of this project first. As far as financing and construction goes, we are looking at in a combination of loans both with Wintrust Bank, who we have an existing relationship with, as well as the SBA Financing Company Growth Corp, as well as private investors. We're looking at, for phase one, putting in $700,000 into the event space build out. From that, we would move into outdoor event space as well as the food hall side. But with that, I would like to give a few minutes to our Evanston-based design and construction team. Thomas Alleman, I always say your name wrong, and Scott Prestangen.
Thanks for your time. It's an honor to be here. And when India first told us about this project, I was stunned that something like this didn't already exist. I'm a soccer dad. I'm at James Park just about every weekend, and it just made so much common sense to me. And she talked about the business case for it with the lack of event space, and so we're just really excited to be their partner. You might be familiar with our work. We designed the YOU building across from the high school. We've been working with the Economic Development Committee on improving the storefronts at Church and Dodge, and we are really committed to this community, and frankly, this is exactly the kind of project why I became an architect, to improve my community. And I know my partner Scott feels the same way. So just really quickly, if we could jump into the pretty pictures. So the idea is from the parking lot, you can go to either the food hall when it's open and the event space. The idea is phase one is the event space, get the income coming in a fiscally responsible way, and then be able to build out the second part. So the site plan, we'll go into the floor plans in the next bit there, but you can see we've got parking 27 spots that can grow into 41 in the future. The event space on the west with kind of a core building within a building that would house the kitchen, bathrooms, and lift. And then on the east side, the market with room for 6 vendors, 3 of which would open out onto very close to the bike path and running path there, so you can run over and get that cup of coffee before your kids' game starts. And then office and bathrooms and mechanical space above. So phase one, very simple. This is an event space with the bar off to the left once you enter, a large event space that holds 256 at least. We wanted to give the space something distinctive to help them rent it out, and we thought a staircase kind of goes with the wedding and events. So there's a stair with that goes up over to a mezzanine on the first floor there. The yellow is the catering space, the kitchen, and then the bathrooms. First phase on the mezzanine, so we would build that building within a building, and you can see there's a room for a small bar up there, a green room for the wedding party, bathrooms. And in second phase, which is very exciting to me because it transforms what is kind of a bunker in the city to a real public space. We take down the metal, the corrugated metal, and put up glass, let light into the space, let the park into the space, and the space out to the park, and everybody can see that they're welcome. Everybody eats. The green is the vendor spaces. You can see the market hall that runs north-south. And then the idea with the mezzanine over the second phase would be co-working space, kind of an incubator space. So this is a photo montage of the event space in full swing. And this is the food hall. You can see really opening up to the park, making a connection that the building, like the architects must have known that this was going to happen. So thank you. Yeah, and there's a space for everybody there. And I want to turn it over to my colleague, Scott Prostangen of Parallel Design Build. We know that this needs to be a real project with a real budget. That's why we did real drawings that Scott could put real numbers to.
Just for timing, we're right at the 11-minute mark.
Okay, thank you. My name is Scott Prostangen of Parallel Design Build, and Thomas stole my thunder. We did spend a lot of time on budget. It's a detailed budget. It's hard to read because there's a lot of info. We worked with major subs so that we could get a sense of the big costs. We also phased it appropriately, and we're trying to be as fiscally sensible as we can on the budget. But we wanted to be careful, so we spent some time on that. And I'd be very happy to answer any budget-related questions on Phase 1, which is what we looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you, Thomas and Scott. Just going to get back to where. As we talked about this project, and especially in an event space and the way that the event season runs, we know that most events are going to run April through November. With that in mind, we would hope, depending on timeline with the city and approval of renderings, we would hope to try get open before the end of 2019. We think it's important for us not only to start generating an income, start generating tax revenue, but also we are in the unique position that during a construction build, we can already book events through renderings that, like you saw above. I personally at Peckish Pig have 5 200-person weddings booked for next fall already, with another 3 inquiries coming in this year. These are real events. These are real people wanting to spend their money within this Evanston community and who are willing to look for a unique and different and modern space. The last thing that I would like to end on is the multiplier effect of what happens when you bring businesses like this or events like this to Evanston. For example, if somebody's holding a wedding or a bar mitzvah or something, and I know many people in this room have probably attended fundraisers or attended corporate events for Evanston-based businesses that have to go outside of Evanston to Morgan Manufacturing or Ravenswood Art Center or, you know, architectural artifacts. And these are people who want to spend their money here and they want to stay local. And then when you bring those guests into Evanston, they stay at Evanston hotels. They eat dinner at Evanston restaurants. They shop at Evanston stores. They frequent Evanston businesses like bakeries and florists and other event-based services that are then revenue generating back into the city. And I think that is not only important for us as we want to be a profitable business. We want the city of Evanston to make their money on this. But as a community at large, when you bring in events like this into the space, you are then seeing a huge return on investment for other businesses in the neighborhood. Very quickly, because I know we're running out of time, we can answer questions about phase 2. The reason that we split this off is cutting your cloth according to your measure and wanting to get open and wanting to start generating revenue first. Knowing with the success that we've already had and the success that we know we will have with the event space, that's when we generate the income to then go into the community aspect of opening a food hall, the kitchen incubator, and things like that. Happy to answer questions on that. We just kind of wanted to focus on what would come first.
Thank you. So maybe we'll have one representative from the group just on deck, and we can open it up to questions or comments from the committee. And you can do both. And so just to put in context, so the next step would be, this process would be the recommendation from our committee to the City Council for a single entity is what the end of our conversation will lead to. In addition to the recommendation, the single entity would enter into real estate negotiations. Staff seeks any guidance on the terms, conditions that should be included in the intermediate stage of the negotiation. Based on the time required to prepare a document authorizing the city manager to negotiate a lease and any other considerations, it is anticipated that this would be on the November 12th City Council agenda. So that's our end goal. We're open for comments, questions. Alderman Rainey.
Well, I don't think it's any mystery that I have been totally opposed to selling this property outright. And I continue to be more and more opposed to selling this property outright. And the reason is it is surrounded by other Evanston property. It is surrounded by our largest park, for which we invest hundreds of thousands of dollars on a regular basis. It is surrounded by the animal shelter, which has been mentioned several times tonight. It's really, the building is in the wrong place to sell. I want to compare the two projects as I see them. First of all, I see the two projects as this. The first proposal I see as Clark Street Real Estate's proposal. It is a very highly respected, very well-funded, notable operation, and as a matter of fact, it presents itself, the first page of the proposal. It's a fully integrated, internally capitalized development company with a local focus and a global reach. Deep relationships, visionaries have developed more than 30 million square feet of property and acquired more than 50,000 acres of land, and now they want to acquire our land. And what concerns me is that they not only want to acquire this land, but the minute we make a decision regarding the animal shelter or the community gardens, they're going to want to acquire that land. And there are developments surrounding the city of Evanston that they have already acquired, and that is the floor and tile place, the Walmart down the street. They're into acquiring land, and that is why they're so special. They are very special. There is no way that Peckish or Palm events can compete with that. There is no way the people, their architects, who have done Little Beans and YOU and other wonderful things in Evanston, can compete with Fitzgerald, who does buildings so tall you can't even see the top floor in downtown Chicago and Evanston and elsewhere. These are people who are so big and so wealthy and have such wonderful deep pockets that I am so impressed. They can't be competed with. But there is a project here. There is a user here that I don't think their user can compete with the event space. And Clark Street Real Estate is going to rent to the rock climbing wall people. And they have no connection to our community. And, you know, I don't know that Fitzgerald has ever built out a rock climbing space. And there's just nothing about Evanston there. We might desperately need a rock climbing facility. But those 750 or 1,000 members are going to be the same 750,000 members that come to that facility every other day or 3 times a week, whereas we all get invitations to fundraisers at the Evanston Golf Club, which happens to be in Skokie. We get fundraiser invitations to Morgan Manufacturer. I've been there at least once this year. To the place on Ravenswood. You know, and don't ask about parking because you have no idea where to park there. The event space proposal is Evanston through and through. Evanston from Tommy Nevins to Celtic Knot ownership to Peckish Pig. These people devoted their entire life savings and their entire life, their entire family to running those operations. The architects are Evanston. I happen to know the people who were not here tonight. The landscape architects are Evanston. Everything is Evanston about it, and we know for a fact from reading the letters of reference, including Gina Speckman, who we give, I think, like $90,000 a year to promote Evanston, says there's nothing we need more than an event space, a venue space for large events. And we have it sitting right in front of our nose and somebody offering to do it. So while I think you can't get anybody bigger and more famous and a better architect than Fitzgerald and Clark Street Real Estate, I don't think you can get a better user than Palm Events. And I would highly support Palm Events.
Thank you, Alderman Rainey. Alderman Wilson?
First, I have one question, then I had some observations, thoughts. But with regard to the Palm House, and obviously there are going to be significant numbers of people attending these events. Is there a plan kind of fleshed out as far as parking is concerned for where people would go? I realize that there are parking lots in the area, but they're not tied to the property.
Yeah.
This is actually televised. So I think part of the plan that we talked about with India is that the space has the potential for 40 additional parking spaces, 46 spaces. But people, the fact is people drink at weddings, and the idea there would be shuttle services, and we're confident that there's enough parking on the spot.
Okay. Right. Alderman Rainey, you made a couple points. Well, first of all, I'm going to have to disagree with your assessment that you can't do at least as well as Fitzgerald. Fitzgerald is an excellent firm. But our architects in town, I think, are just as excellent. So
They're fabulous, but I mean, if you wanted to do a financial thing, I mean, Fitzgerald is fabulous. Ours, I love ours.
they're both, I think, and I think you'd agree, they're equally fabulous.
They know I wasn't putting them down, but
I couldn't.
Fitzgerald is really
I felt like I had to just make sure you clarified that. Okay.
Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you. These are both, obviously they're different, but they're both excellent ideas. And there's a lot in both proposals that's very appealing to me. I'm a fairly active person. I haven't done much rock climbing. I've done a bit of it. I have friends that are very interested in it and do a good bit of that. And I sure as heck enjoy the Peckish Pig, and as does my family and friends. There is... there are places in town that I like as much, but there's not any place that I like more. So it's that part of it's very personal. Alderman Rainey, I get part of your point. I look out into the room and I see on this side, I see people that are friends of mine, and I see on this side of the room people that might eventually become friends of mine. But the challenging part is, and throughout the process. You and I have disagreed on whether the property is appropriate to sell, and as I've expressed before, I do think it is not inappropriate to sell this property. I'm not comfortable with the city maintaining its role as long-term landlord on projects. I was correctly quoted in your packet. I hesitated to put the city in a position where we were going to be a landlord. That one worked out quite well. I have absolutely no doubt that if you undertook this, it would be fabulous as well, just as wonderful. But in the end, I feel like I know that I've got an obligation to the taxpayers of the city to do what makes the most sense with regard to the assets and the financial circumstances. And, putting these on the balance, having an opportunity to sell the property, not to have the long-term potential obligations. We've seen the very adverse consequences of maintaining a parcel of property beyond its useful existing lifespan, and are continuously dealing with consequences from that. So I'm coming down when I put it on the balance that I would prefer to sell this property, and I do think that the proposal that is set forth makes sense. It's in a an athletic kind of campus-oriented area. There is tie into the other programs there, and so that's how I feel about it.
Thank you, Alderman Winston. Andy Boghosi.
Sure. I never, as an architect, I never thought of Fitzgerald as a giant, but
I love them.
I learn something new every day. I would concur that the use of the rock climbing facility is more fitting to James Park, and it's more conducive to an athletic and recreation zone. But I just had a question. I don't know if anybody can answer me from the city. What is the current zoning of the property, and how is that going to get reconciled with either one of these deals going forward?
I too.
Thanks for the question. It's currently zoned, I believe, I-2. It's an industrial use, so we would have to go through the zoning process to determine how either use works. Unfortunately, I don't know what the code says about either use in that space. I'm going to guess that neither are permitted currently.
As the chair of the zoning board, I can answer that question. It's going to be a special. It's going to be a special use, and so they're going to have to come to us for a special use permit.
Either business would have the same
Yes,
process.
either one, because neither one is allowed by right in that district. And so we're going to end up addressing things like parking and hours and all that sort of stuff that is of concern.
And
thank you.
Thank you.
And I think that I was going to raise that issue, so I'm glad you pointed that out.
Yeah.
I think there was, in Alderman Rainey, I'll never put words in your mouth, but there was almost undertone, so I'll push it from my own words, is if if we were to make the recommendation, if they were to purchase the property, what would happen if they wanted to, for whatever reason, the rock climbing company decided to move out and they wanted to then have a different use, whether it was a building, retail, whatever the case may be. I think you all know as developers that you would have to come before City Council for a special use permit. So it's not like you can, the big ifs, you can't purchase it for this use and then 5 years down the line decide to switch it without it coming before council. Okay.
My light was on. My light was on.
I was going to ask some questions, but that's fine. Please.
I've always been very clear that it wasn't that I didn't want this building sold ever. I want it, as we've done in the past, a lease, beginning lease, and then a sale. I don't want this building sold outright. I don't know that these people are not going to be rock climbing for 2 years and then sold. I have no problem with this building being sold after 5. I don't want us to own this building forever, but I don't want this building sold and flipped. And I don't want any kind of covenants in it that you can't sell this building for 2 years or whatever. We'll be in court about a taking or something. This building needs to be leased. First of all, it needs to be leased. It should not be sold. It should especially not be sold to a known, very, very active developer who had, they could have bad blood between them shortly, and it will never be a rock climbing facility. I'm very concerned about this. If these rock climbers came to us, I would say this would be a fair fight. This is not a fair fight. This is not a fair competition between the rock climbers and this. This is a major developer. All right, let's say the architect's not so great anymore. But but this is just definitely not a fair fight between the rock climber. And you can't, this developer is just, that is the project. The developer is the project. It's the developer versus the event space. That's what we're looking at here. And that's not what I bargained for here.
Thank you, Alderman Rady. Alderman Simmons, followed by Mr. Powell, followed by Alderman Nguyen.
Thank you. To the rock climbing business, could you tell me more about the co-working services and facilities that you mentioned? Or did I hear that wrong?
No, you didn't hear that wrong. It's something newer that we've started. Our Block 37 facility and our Avondale facility, we have like tables and social space set up with access to where people can hook up their computers, and we have free Wi-Fi to all of our guests. And a lot of people come in and do work during the day and then take, a lot of people who work remotely, for example, might come in and work at the space and co-work together and then get a workout. So we do not have a specific set-aside co-working business, but we have space that we've devoted to being able to co-work at the space. For example, at Block 37, we have an entire set of table and chairs along the windows overlooking the theater district where people can work and then go climb. And at Avondale, up on our mezzanine, we also have co-working space set aside, and we have a meeting room that we use for birthday parties and events and corporate events that can also be used for co-working, and people work there during the day.
Okay, and then in terms of the fees.
Mm-hmm.
And any sort of corporate responsibility, do you intentionally make sure that all residents have access to the recreation?
So we have partnered with lots of different groups to provide access to people with less means. And then, for example, at our Uptown location, we do events with Boys and Girls Clubs. On top of that, we've also allowed our members, so like I said, we have over 4,000 members in Chicago, and we've allowed our members to suggest groups or ideas, and why don't we bring in such and such a group, a Boys and Girls Club or a group from a South Side school who wouldn't be able to normally afford it, and we've either funded it or allowed our members to do a fundraiser for the group to come in and have pizza and climb. And that's in terms of the special events we do. On top of that, I mentioned that we expect approximately 300 people a day at this space, but we actually, so our busiest hours for our average customer is right after work. So, people go to work and then they go and exercise. We open the facility for a significant cost, less than half off during less than peak business hours. So during the day, we open the full gym with yoga classes, fitness classes, and climbing. We call it our kind of like off hours membership. So it's we do have a discounted membership that we offer and we'll offer here. And not only that, go ahead.
What sort of lease term would you have with the developer?
So we would have at least a 10-year lease. So we as a business are investing in the climbing walls, and our investment wouldn't make sense if we were only going to stay 2 years. So we're committing to a 10-year lease, at least with 5-year options.
Okay. So I agree that there has been discussion in the community about lack of innovative event space, but it seems that there are a couple other businesses proposed that might fill that space. There definitely and certainly is a gap in recreation for families and for the junior high school age. So could you tell me if you regularly have that age range? There's been concern about activity, not having enough activities for that age range.
Well, so, we have hundreds of youth that use the facility on a weekly basis. So we have a recreational youth program, recreational being kind of like anyone can drop in and take a class, sign up for a slot, and drop off some kids to climb for an hour, where we have over 250 youth enrolled and climbing regularly. And then we also have a competitive, so we have levels of competitive climbing as well. So we have a team that competes nationally that has actually sent climbers from Chicago all the way to Worlds to climb. And our competitive team has over 200 youth as well that climb, and that ranges from middle school up through 18. We also do groups of students from high school and do after school programming and things like that. And we've even done during school programming, like fitness gym class kinds of things. I think also to speak to the family thing, I think it is a unique activity in that people oftentimes come to the gym, I mentioned this earlier, and climb as a family.
Right.
So I think that's kind of a unique offering.
So I agree. I think that we could use some more opportunities for family recreation. And for older children, I know there's Little Beans, but if you kind of grow beyond that age. So I like the idea. I think that it is a destination. It would bring folks from beyond Evanston, and I support that. Those folks would come and support local businesses as well. I believe that it would be a cool space for team building, as you mentioned, and it could be a unique event space in its own right. You mentioned that you also have a model of supporting local food businesses.
Yes. We've also done events, just to give an example, so, we are not an event space in the same way that Peckish Pig is proposing. It sounds very cool. Mm-hmm. We have hosted women-produced film events, so independent films, where we had film producers from Colorado and out west come in and show films about women in the outdoor industry and women who rock climb and climb mountains. We've also had minority-produced film nights where we purchased the food and drinks and had 400 or 500 members come out to view film. So we do events, but it's something really that we see as giving back to the community. It's not really something that we see as our core business, but because we have this big open space, it suits that well.
And one last thing, have you ever or would you consider having a sliding scale membership for income qualifying families?
Yes, we would consider that.
Thank you.
And before we get to the next speech, just a couple of quick questions in terms of non-traditional groups that most people wouldn't think of because we're such a well-rounded communities. Do you do any type of activity training for people with disabilities?
Yes, we do.
You do?
So we actually have groups that come in and climb. We actually have. I mean, this might be kind of hard to imagine. I wish we could have had a picture of it, but we have blind climbers that climb that actually compete internationally as blind climbers, and we host training events for them. We also have groups that come in that have various. They might climb without a limb, or they might climb, for example, without a leg or without a foot. Veterans that might come in, and we host events where we offer the equipment and help them get on their harnesses and climb together and kind of encourage each other and do team building in that respect too.
And then, of course, so if you can do disabilities, I'm assuming you can also gauge your classes around active seniors as well.
Yes.
Okay. I have some additional questions later. Next, we have Mr. Powell, followed by, I'm sorry.
I needed to say one thing, that I loved Tommy Nevins and Peckish Pig and Celtic Knot, and I don't think that support of one business is in any way anti-Evanston. So best shepherd's pie at Nevins. My favorite chili is at Celtic Knot. And Peckish, I love the lamb pizza, and I really appreciate everything that you do for Evanston, all the folks that you employ, and your commitment to seeing through your lease with option to purchase with the city of Evanston.
Thank you. Mr. Powell, followed by Alderman Nguyen.
Yeah, Ronald, what about your favorite barbecue place?
Yes. It's the sauce. You know that, though.
Okay, yeah, but I want them to know.
Okay.
Question, yeah.
I'm back.
Question, how many?
My question.
Yeah, how many? Okay, well, we can collect, Peter. That's what we're looking for. How many people do you think that this facility will be employing?
I think that we will have between 5 and 7 full-time and between 20 to 30 part-time people. So 7 to 10 full-time equivalents.
And how many part-time you said?
20 to 30.
20 and 30? Now, I'd just like to ask Peckish Pig, the same question. Don't go anywhere. I'm not done. I'm not done with you.
We are looking at employing between the event staff as well as the bar staff, somewhere between 5 and 10 full-time. That would be us directly employing people. What we didn't touch on, the food hall side, the 6 to 10, we have it prepped out for 6 right now. Food vendors, we would be leasing spaces to them. Those would be individual Evanston businesses or outside Evanston businesses. We've talked to a variety of vendors. They would also then employ their own staff as well as maintain their own Evanston health licenses as well with the city. So those would be individually owned and operated, but they would employ their own staff as well.
Okay. You do a lot of training on the staff at Peckish Pig, is that right?
We do, and a huge component that we didn't get to touch on, I know we are kind of short for time on the way presentations go, but this is something that we did in the original proposal that was submitted, talk a lot about the food hall side, which was much more of the community incubator side. It is the smaller portion and the portion to come later because it is financially not as quick to make money for both us and for the city, so we're trying to be fiscally responsible with the way we do that. But a huge issue that we see in our industry is lack of bodies to work in kitchens. I know we have talked to Sue Trishman, I can never say her name right, who owns Kurt's Cafe. We've had kind of similar conversations with her, and also with Talking Farms about doing teaching programs, both on growing and producing your own food, teaching people to work culinary jobs, as well as almost every vendor that we have contacted about whether or not the vendor space would be something they'd be interested in, has expressed interest in teaching their own teaching classes, as well as partnering with maybe the, I don't know if high school would probably be the best age for that, but working through some culinary teaching programs as well.
Okay, just got two more questions. Yes. You mentioned, and this is important to me, if you can remember the numbers, how much taxes have you paid?
So $9 million in sales over the last 4.5 years. That is over $100,000 in property taxes.
Property taxes?
Over $100,000.
Say it again.
Over $100,000 in property taxes. They keep rising every year. And the I think it was over 160,000. If I don't have it in front of me, but over $160,000 in liquor tax as well. We estimate in this business as well, we would produce somewhere between $2,000 and $4,000 monthly in liquor tax to the city of Evanston. And then we've over $800,000 in sales tax in the last 4.5 years.
What is your average food cost?
The menu runs for the Peckish or for the Palm House?
Just like Peckish.
The menu runs anywhere from $5 to, I think the most expensive thing is $26.
What's the margins?
The margins?
Yeah.
Margins usually 30% food cost.
Right. So you're working on small margins.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay.
So before we move on to next, I had a couple of quick operational questions because I couldn't read it out of the. Do you plan, and I realize you're doing this in phases, but will you eventually, the goal is to run both businesses, so Palm House Productions, we see that as the management group that would run both spaces. So we would run the event side. We would hold the sole liquor license for the entire building. So any event that came in, whether we were to cater that, whether any of our vendors would cater that, or whether they would bring in outside catering, we would hold the sole liquor license. So all the liquor sales would be kept within City of Evanston and be in Evanston taxed dollars. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Alderman Wynn? No, I'm not done. Oh. I'm warming up. Okay. I'm done with you.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. As far as training.
Yes.
Do you train your staff, or do you, when you hire people?
Yes.
Okay. That's it. What kind of training do you do?
So, I mean, we train staff. So we have customer service staff that works at the front desk. Then we train to educate newcomers about climbing and also to help members know what services we offer. We also have people that train people how to rock climb, that teach them how to learn the basics of tying the knots, to using the harnesses, to using the shoes and the equipment. We also have staff that we train to run events, to run birthday parties, to run corporate and business events. Obviously our business is many faceted because we also have personal training. So we have personal trainers. We have people that run group training, like you might have heard of the term like a boot camp, like boot camp morning classes. So we train people to, we have people that we train to do that, and also just to, we train each of those people kind of as a local business that this is how we want to run our business, this is how we want to treat our customers, and this is how we want to operate in this community. So we train in each of those specialties, but then also train them as a company about this is how we want to run as First Ascent.
What's the percentage of minorities you have on staff?
That many. Okay.
25%.
Are you going to ask them about local employment opportunities, Mr. Powell?
That's next.
I figured
okay,
so.
I'll let you have that one.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Okay. One other thing, 25%.
Yeah.
Do you mean male, female, or just?
No. Let's take the female out. Let's. Okay, we're not going to play that game. Color. Okay.
Color?
Oh, 25%?
It'd be more if it were just if we were including female.
Okay. Just two more questions here.
Taking the female out? I don't understand.
Well, that was just his answer, not mine. You can.
When you talking about minorities, I was dealing with race.
Okay. That was his question.
Got it.
Okay, I didn't want to put the females in there. What's the price on your memberships?
The standard membership is $79 a month, and the reduced membership is $35 a month. $39 a month.
Okay. All right, Paul, I got a question for you. Where did we get this $1 million from?
The $1 million in sale price?
Yeah, in the sale price.
That's what they're proposing.
Well, that's what I want to.
Yeah, Mr. Powell, that's their purchase. If we were going to proceed with them as the selection, we would get an appraisal, and I believe we already had one for the previous, but we would get that updated. That's their offer.
That's their offer.
Yeah,
so it hasn't been appraised out. So if it appraised at $3 million or $4 million, are they still in the ball game?
Our proposal was based off of two things. We looked at the market comps for land sales and building sales of similar situated parcels within Evanston, which I think you'll find is comparable. As it relates to if the property's worth, if the city thinks it's $10 million, yes, without a doubt, we are out. We looked at how we could put our tenant long-term into be a position to be successful. Because even though like we're landlord-tenant relationship, we truly look at them as partners, and we're only successful if they're successful. So that is, we need to put them in an occupancy cost where everyone can make a fair and reasonable return.
Right. And just as a point of information, I hope after we get through the round of questions with whatever the recommendations, depending on if we take a vote, that at the end of that vote, then we move forward with recommendations for the terms. That's also part of what staff is asking for. Does that make sense? So we'll take a vote and decide which group we're going to send to council, and then we'll attach whatever recommendations that you may have. Fair enough? Thank you.
Mr. Chair, just for a point of clarification, Mr. Powell, if we trust our local media source, because I had to do this quickly, Mr. Smith had drafted an article recently that said the previous appraisal was $845,000 for the property. I'll verify that with
How long ago was that?
I'm sorry, Bill Smith of Evanston now. But I'll verify through our staff files to determine what the appraisal was. I'm trying to quickly answer your question. He reported that it was appraised at $845,000.
Okay.
If in the next 5 minutes, if I can find it in our staff files, I'll let you know.
Thank you.
One other question, I'll be done with you. How did you come up with those numbers of 300 people will visit that place a day?
Probably based on their operations, other operations.
I'm asking him. Y'all want to answer for?
No.
Oh, okay.
So we based that off of our
I see where y'all going with this, but go ahead.
Well, we have 4 operating climbing gyms in pretty different neighborhoods and communities around Chicago, and we studied the demographics of Evanston and looked at the other fitness facilities and other offerings, and based on that, we made what we think is a conservative estimate of how many people would, on average, use the gym per day and how many members we would have. So it was based on our operations elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. I think they did a great job in presenting. I know Peckish Pig because I go there, like all of us.
We all do, yeah.
I just hope tonight we don't take a vote on this, because I would like to go and visit their facilities and see what's going on. I mean, anybody could put on a good dog and pony shows. I've done it for years. But to see what's going on and see how it's operating, to me, I like touching stuff. But, I'm pretty sure you're not going to agree with it. But I would put this off until next time.
Okay.
I'm done.
Thank you. Alderman Nguyen?
Yeah. Thank you.
Did you call me? Nguyen, followed by myself. Followed by, I'm sorry, Alderman Nguyen has the mic. Okay. Yes. Alderman Rainey?
Clark Street.
Alderman Rainey?
Yes.
I apologize. Alderman Nguyen, followed by myself.
Okay,
and then
Okay.
Burns.
Say it again?
Burns.
Byrne. Thank you, Byrne.
It's Burns.
Ms. Byrne.
Okay.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes. Thank you very much. I wish we had 2 recycling centers because both of these, it's hard to believe that anyone could wish that after all these years. But I think both of these proposals are remarkable and really interesting, and I think they both would be successful. And like everyone here, I've always loved Peckish Pig. I've known Debbie since we were Lincoln School parents. India was my son Matthew's 5th grade buddy when he was in kindergarten. Scott Prestangen and I worked on the renovation of my church, St. Paul's Lutheran, 2 years ago. So it's a marvelous team. And I just wish Peckish Pig would take reservations, because I'm married to someone who hates to wait. So, but on the other hand, First Ascent, where were you 10 years ago when I had a 14-year-old who climbed everything? And he's promised me he won't tell me when he does like bungee jumps and things like that. So I think that both of these are such interesting concepts. I do think that First Ascent, this is the kind of recreation that we've all been talking about, except it's not bowling. You know, we've talked about bowling. You don't know this in Evanston forever. Actually, this is a much healthier recreational activity, and it isn't. I know from having searched for climbing walls 10 years ago, they're hard to find, and it's a great activity. So, and I do like the idea of all of the other activities that can coexist with it. I noticed you have a letter from Miguel Wong in here, who runs CoLab at the corner of Chicago and Maine. I know him very well. He runs CoLab. So I think that when I look at both of these proposals, I do think it's time that we sold the recycling center. We're not going to sign an agreement with unless First Ascent is in on the deal. I mean, we're not signing an agreement to sell you. No offense, but not to a straight developer. It's
the use
site. We're signing up for a package.
Yeah.
So, on balance, as Alderman Wilson has said, and I do think that it's time that we sold this and that we're not the landlord anymore. And I do think that the First Ascent offers something that is very, very different in Evanston. And I say that thinking the Peckish Pig ideas are marvelous, and we just have to look for another space for you. So that's my view on this. I think we're remarkably lucky to have such great proposals for us.
Thank you, Alderman Nguyen. Ms. Byrne?
Thank you. I have to say, I love the idea of the food hall. I think it's a genius idea, and I think it'd be really great here. I think it's just the wrong space for it. I think that there's probably another spot in town that would make a little bit more sense from a couple of different perspectives. One of the first things is from coming at this from a zoning perspective, right? We get asked for special uses all the time, and what we have found to be a more compatible use in the I district is a sports recreation facility. So we have certainly approved those variations, those special uses, recommended those special uses more recently. And so I think that this is definitely the climbing gym is a more compatible zoning use for that district. I also happen to think it's a better use for a unique building. I don't know where you guys can find a 60-foot tall building or a 45-foot tall building in many places in Evanston where you can set up a rock climbing wall. And so I think the better use for this space is the more unique, is the one that needs that height, the one that needs that sort of open space. I also really like the activation. I'm incredulous too at 350 uses a day and up to 750, but if that's really true, I like getting all of those people in and out of that space and in and out of Evanston every day. And I think that's really great. It's going to make a big difference to what happens in that corridor and can happen elsewhere in Evanston. And then lastly, since I happen to frequent that big box store across the street like 5 times a day, every time I'm waiting at that light and I look at the building, I think, what the heck is taking so long on this thing? And so I had to check with Paul that the last application has been sitting for a couple of years. And so for me, your capitalization, your realistic budget, your experience working through the process and having that funding is a really key component that makes it compelling for me as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burr. I just had a couple of operational questions. So as part of your market research, you realize we have a ton of boutique workout facilities. We have major gyms, 3 pools, and we're close to the lakefront. And you still feel confident with your goal of 300 people per, what was that, a day?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so.
Okay.
So, I mean, in each of the markets we operate in currently, there's a lot of other fitness uses. So we looked at that and looked at Evanston, and actually that's a good indicator for us as a business that there is a lot of active people.
Right.
And because of the fact that we have both full service fitness and personal training and workout equipment and something different, and climbing and yoga included, it ends up being a great value proposition for a lot of people. So yeah, we actually considered all of those things when we made those estimations, and that would actually put this gym conservatively at the lower end of participation per day of our other facilities. I think that's a conservative guess, and yes, we feel confident in that.
And another operational question, how do you compete versus complement like the other CrossFit gyms that are in our community? Do they come to your facility for an additional workout experience, or are they going to be threatened by your presence in town?
So, I mean, I think one thing to note is that we cannot compete with the things that CrossFit does. We do not have, like, for example, people that are coached in Olympic lifting and those kinds of things. We focus more on what you might call functional training. So a lot of our equipment is allows people to get a good workout, but it's not really focused on that really intense kind of workout. But then at the same time, rock climbing is a very unique fitness offering. And for some people, it is the only thing they do. I mean, for me, it's kind of the only thing I do for fitness anymore, but that's because it's fun fitness, so it keeps me fit. For some people, it's something they do once a week, or maybe they buy a 10-punch pack or a reduced membership and go once in a while. So for some people, it's ancillary to their overall kind of like activities that they do with their family or their kids, and for some people it's their primary thing. So we've found that we fit in well with other gyms, and have even done cross sales with other local gyms like Export near to us in Avondale. So I mean, we haven't been, I don't think people have really seen us as direct competition, but we've actually cross sold to each other's members, and I think that's a good sign that we would fit in well with the fitness offerings here.
Perfect. And so I guess my comments, and I would agree with everyone behind the dais, is that I want to thank both of the groups for coming forward. Definitely a big fan of the hometown team and what you've done in terms of growing your business. We know that you're not going anywhere, so that is a good feeling. I am leaning towards supporting the unique rock climbing business more so from a budgetary standpoint, and the reasons that are outlined, the $1 million sales price, which of course will be negotiated, the 104 property taxes, your estimated 100,000 retail sales in food and operations, and also the fact that you would not be requesting any economic incentives, which I think is very important during this budgetary season. And I'm going to assume that there may be opportunities for local employment training in whatever capacity to come. We have one more comment from Alderman Rainey, and then we will move to a vote, and then depending on which the outcome, we can make the recommendations to staff. Everyone okay with that?
Well, you've made more promises to, don't leave, please. You've made more promises to more people tonight than, I can even imagine you being able to fulfill. But since you've done that, I'm sitting here thinking, how can you be everything to everybody? And every question that you were asked tonight, yes, you do that. Yes, you do that.
Well,
so I would like you to put in writing all of those things that you've agreed to. For example, you're going to do things for families, and you're going to give sliding scale rates, et cetera. So if you are to receive the go-ahead on this, I would like to have it in writing what you're going to do. Also, I just can't imagine having this facility having 300-400 people, 500 people a day, with the facility adjacent to you, which is also an indoor facility, the Sports Dome, who I have to meet with at least once a month about no parking. I mean, they have a parking issue. So it's going to be a pretty complicated situation with parking, because they're daytime and, you know, as opposed to being a nighttime operation. So I hope you've met with them and, you know, discussed that. And I'm wondering if Clark Street Real Estate would do a deal where it's a 3-year lease with ownership at the end of 3 years. And if not, why not?
Would you like me to respond?
And if not, why not? If not, why not?
To answer your question, Alderman Rainey, I think we outlaid the amount of capital investment that we'd be putting in. To do a 3-year lease with the option to own is just not a viable financing source in the capital markets today. I mean, that's the harsh reality of the lending environment that we live in today. So it's just not feasible, and that's why a short-term lease really would not work, and that's why we're looking to.
Wouldn't be a short. It would be a 3-year lease with a guaranteed ownership if you so opted.
Our desire is to purchase the property and to acquire it, reposition it, and bring a best-in-class operator to the facility.
Right. You started this business in 2015. Was that your first opening?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. And you now have 4.
Yes.
4 facilities?
Yes.
So what is your average profit on a store, whatever you call it?
I think because they're a privately held business.
You know,
I don't see how that is relevant to the question.
I'm really curious because if this doesn't
I understand
work,
you're curious, and I'm
but
curious.
But you're not involved with their other businesses,
I
right?
am involved in their business because
And all
I am
of
their
them?
partner.
In all of their businesses?
No, I'm involved with their business to be a tenant.
No,
to
but
be a tenant,
Maybe
and
just a
I've
point of
evaluated the financial health of their company. But I don't think it's relevant to talk about a privately held company's
Well, we
profit.
asked India.
I think it's important to do a point of order.
Okay.
I respectfully,
okay,
because he isn't seeking incentives or any city-funded or requests, I think if that's something you would like to discuss with the owners outside of this committee, that's up to them. But I think in terms of a public discussion, I don't think that wasn't part of the
Could I
RF.
just ask you something? We allowed Mr. Powell to ask India Evans what her ratio was, 30% profit over the food price. So I was just wondering how his profit margin was.
Right, but I think out of respect, she chose to answer the question. Out of respect to the applicants, they're choosing not to answer the question. That's all I was making a point of clarification based on those
Well, my concern
comments.
is we have a tenant here who has opened 4 stores, now 5 stores in 4 years, and so in 4 years. So I'm just a little concerned with, going forward.
They're successful. That's
yes,
not something to be afraid of.
Right. Yes.
Well, it was all right over the years for people to be concerned about other operations, and so I'm just concerned.
Okay.
Fair enough, and just out of respect to the question, I think if they're offering $1 million, the proof will, without going into the decision, that's where they will demonstrate whether or not.
But that's not why
Fair enough.
not why people are voting for this, because of the $1 million, is it?
I have Alderman Wilson.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion. I would move that the committee recommend that the staff prepare a term sheet for the first dissent proposal to be transmitted to the City Council for review and approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Any
I'd like to make
comments?
an amendment.
to the
To the motion.
motion.
Yeah, I'd like to get a current current appraisal.
As part of the terms or as part of the?
No, I would like to amend this for a current appraisal. It might be lower, it might be more.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson, there's a motion for an amendment. Do you want to?
I certainly don't mind, and I think it's appropriate if, in the course of preparing that term sheet, the current appraisal or an updated appraisal is included with that transmittal to the council.
Okay. So it's been accepted. Are there any other discussions before we call the question?
Wait. That wasn't a friendly amendment. That was an amendment that I would like a vote on.
He just accepted as a friendly.
He accepted your amendment. He made changes in his motion to include that.
Well,
I may not be as good as you are, but I do. He accepted your amendment. Do you want us to take a vote on it? You sure? All right. There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no more lights, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
I'd like a roll call, please.
Okay. Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
I have to recuse myself.
Okay. I'll vote aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye.
All right. The vote passes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 to 1. Thank you. All right. And please, who's taking notes? Cindy? Please note no for Alderman Rainey, and Mr. Powell recuses himself. Thank you. Okay. We still have a number of agenda items to go through, but if there are any specific terms that we would like to send along with this package, I'll entertain lights. I do have a couple of... What's that? Go to the next?
Yeah.
I do have a couple of quick just clarifications then. Yeah, so a couple of quick, as the second part, just a couple of quick issues. So Alderman Rainey's terms, on page 86, and Paul, I guess I can talk to you offline. They refer to the sellers section. In the sellers section, they are, and I don't know if this is a boilerplate, that the city would be responsible for paying the transfer taxes. Is that normal?
I would have to verify that. I do not know the technical answer to that.
So that's the one question.
That is customary that a seller pays.
Sellers paying, so we're paying ourselves?
Right. I understand your question. So
in regular real estate transactions, that's typical.
Clear. I'm
it
just
does
asking
seem
if
weird.
we're paying ourselves. That's all.
Right.
The second question that I have is number 12, the confidentiality clause.
Okay.
And just to get some clarification on that.
Cindy, are you getting that for are you getting these two issues that were in front?
Again, this could be a boilerplate that you all use everywhere else, just in this public transaction. I got it. Just letting you know that I read it, and just clarification to our staff, that's all. We don't have to get into the weeds now. And I think that's it.
So, Mr. Chair, our law department will
vet it. Thanks.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Thank you.
Seeing no other terms, we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Howard Street's holiday lights. Thank you, gentlemen.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Item number 3, proposed changes to the business license requirements. Who's got that?
We're looking at almost 9:30. I'd like to get into discussing this item in a little more detail if the committee is willing to hear it this evening. We're seeking a recommendation of the City Council to consider changes to the business license process. We reviewed the State of Illinois' database, which includes all entities that are licensed with the state. And we learned that there are some 12,000 entities in Evanston. And that kind of gave us a little bit of a shock because we're only, our business license process, we license about 500. But as we did additional research, we discovered that many of those entities are homeowners associations, family estates, trusts, property LLCs, so on and so forth. So we're estimating currently that there are approximately 4,400 entities in Evanston, so we're still missing out on quite a few. And we also acknowledge that there are some 2,500 home-based businesses that are not licensed at all. So we're having the conversation internally, and we'd like a recommendation to the city council to amend our business license code to actually business registration. One of the reasons why is over the years, we've had difficulty communicating directly with our businesses. We think that there's an opportunity to present business-to-business opportunities. There's RFP opportunities, city procurement. We often, and I think some of you on the committee will appreciate this, we'd like the opportunity to have all of our entities identify themselves if they're MWEBE. We don't have a clear sense in this community how many we have. So our thought is to modify the code as summarized in the packet that will allow us to ask the questions. Are you MWEBE? How many employees do you have? And we have outlined a kind of a scale of how much we would charge each business based on the size of the business. Home-based businesses would have a flat fee of $25, and then businesses that are occupying commercial spaces would range from $75 to something in the range of $250, depending on their square footage. Now, this is an annual expense. We also think it provides an opportunity for us to report public service announcements. I think of snow removal as an example. We literally will go door to door with tags to businesses that are not removing snow and ask them, please, to remove your snow. This would be a way to communicate that way, because I think a lot of businesses don't realize that they're responsible for that. And I think also the adjustment to the code would allow us to offset some of the costs associated. We get calls from time to time from community asking that we go address a home-based business that may be operating illegally. We have to spend staff time to do that. We estimate that there's a potential additional $200,000 in revenue from this new process. It's likely going to be a little bit less because we don't know how accurate the state data is. We're going to try this out. Upon City Council approval, we would kind of launch the new process in October, November. I imagine we're going to get a stack of could not deliver, and we'll adjust it accordingly. But we're estimating, based on our price structure, that the top end would add an additional $200,000 in revenue. So I open it up for questions. I know additional taxation is not something that I come to this committee ever to talk about. And in fact, we're always talking about how do we reduce regulation. But I'll open that up.
So before we open up the questions, I just want to make a couple clarifications, Paul. So for those of you, in terms of MWB, the city's perspective is, so we recognize the M and we recognize the W, so the minority, the women, the Evanston-based businesses, we treat all the same. So under the old system, or what we currently do, we don't capture those demographics. So if someone's an Evanston-based business, again, no special treatment. So I think I like the idea of being able to capture that information. The other thing I would like to know, and I don't know if it's part of the current business application, I assume that it is, whether someone's renting or owning. And then what I like about this is, and again, this is not part of the discussion this evening, that it sets us up if we later decided to license landlords, and we would have some type of information already in place. We have Alderman Wilson, followed by Mr. Powell, followed by Ms. Byrne. Did I miss anyone?
You did.
My apologies. I almost called you that. Alderman Simmons. Alderman Wilson.
Last time we had a conversation about the business licensing, we had 9 opinions at the council, so I think that we're likely to have 9, very valuable, sets of contributions. I think if we try to get through all those tonight, we'd be here an awful long time.
Sure.
So I think your point is well taken. I think that for businesses that don't really require any sort of specific inspection follow-up types of licensing protocol, this makes some sense. I assume that you'll be thoughtful and conscientious of which ones you put into registration category. Maybe a blanket division between food, non-food might not make 100% sense.
Yeah, so if I may, the food establishments would remain completely separate from this process.
Right.
Yeah, so
but just as you're working through how other people do that and what you're going to present to council, just be mindful of who's going to require more staff time, legwork, inspections, things of that nature as far as the fee structure. So I would just move that we have staff prepare this and present it to the council for further discussion.
I'm not sure if that's a motion. I still have two additional lights.
Yeah, and we'll talk about it.
Okay, so it's been properly moved and seconded. There's a motion that's on the floor. We will take Mr. Powell, followed by Alderman Ruth Simmons, followed by Ms. Byrne, and then we'll speak to the motion. Mr. Powell?
I'll yield to Ms. Simmons.
Thank you.
I'll go behind.
Thank you. Alderman Simmons?
Thank you, Mr. Powell.
You're welcome.
Really?
Sorry, it's Mr. Powell. So I think this is a great idea because we are missing some businesses and we're missing opportunities to support them. And I recently had an occasion where I stumbled across a fantastic new business in the ward that had we had a process similar to this, I could have been alerted and reached out to make sure that we were giving her proper support. And the same thing with the home-based businesses, especially as we are doing our work on MWEBE. We can have a proper account for the businesses that are in town and how can we make sure that we're doing proper outreach and getting them the information. So I'm going to be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Powell?
A real simple question here. How did you come up with $25 for a home and $75 for commercial?
With assistance of my colleague Cindy Plant, we did some research on adjacent communities. We're also trying to scale it to be fair. I mean, we're not the level of service we're going to provide a home-based business based on this regulation or this registry system is not as high as something that we would need to do for the level of inspections we need for a 3,000 square foot building or a 10,000 square foot building. That requires more staff time, and there has to be some transaction that happens to offset the cost of these inspections. So that's why. I mean, the $25 is, in some ways, it's arbitrary. I mean, we're trying to scale it to what it would cost to manage a process where we're communicating with these businesses about events. We have to kind of regulate with staff time. I mean, could it be less? Could it be more? I would argue yes.
I guess I'm real sensitive to this because we're in a commercial storefronts and so forth. I mean, we pay higher taxes.
Yeah.
We pay, rent, the whole bit. We have our overhead's a lot more than somebody's in a home doing business. A lot of times the home business, if it's not a beginning business, because you got the computers and everything, they make a lot more money sometimes than we in the commercial business.
Yeah.
And I just don't, I think they need to be equal, or let's change the rules sometime and let the commercial be less than the homes. Because, what I pay in taxes, even with my building, I mean, it's a hell of a lot.
Right. So I do want to point out, Mr. Powell.
And then the thing about it, you got the county, you got other people hitting you for little charges, and it all adds up.
Mm-hmm. Well, one thing we're proposing, Mr. Powell, to kind of address that, I mean, we're going to eliminate, there's an annual tax that you receive for each of the letters you have on your window, like a sign tax, essentially. That's going to disappear. I'm not sure if you're even aware that you pay that, and that's just going to be baked into our overall process.
So that's going to be eliminated.
Yeah, so you'll save around $12 to $20 a year, but the point is,
So now you can put it's in
there's
the
a cost
sauce twice on the
associated
window.
with that. We're conscious of kind of the quote unquote nickel and dime effect.
Paint your face on the window, all of that good stuff. Are you?
Paul, I mean, is this something you could just take under consideration? And let's look at something. Why can't we get a little creative and do something different? I mean, it's too much. I mean, this stuff is becoming too much. These taxes, these little charges. I'm just telling you, from a business owner, it's really becoming too much.
Right. The alternative.
Everybody's hitting us. The county's hitting us. The city's hitting us. The state's hitting us.
Right. The alternative, Mr. Powell, is that we eliminate the business license process and a registry, and I imagine, and I don't anticipate the city council would support that. I mean, just we either have it or we eliminate it, right? I think what we've laid out is a fair cost structure based on the size of your business and the impact it has on staff's ability to come out. And by the way, you're a food establishment, if we're talking about your situation, which is not related to this specifically, but overall, I know you're advocating for the businesses.
Okay,
I
it's
understand.
not just about me. It's about the other businesses in this community. And I think at least you can make it equal.
Noted.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Ms. Burton?
So I'm going to come at this from the other perspective, which is of the home-based business owner who happens to own 5 home-based businesses. So now I'm going to get hit with $25 per business for no service. You're asking me to pay for the right to be in your database. And that seems crazy to me. I know that this is clearly not something that anybody else feels strongly about in this direction, but I don't understand what I'm paying for except for you to have the right to email me. And that seems...
You know what, I may take a stab at that. So
Yeah.
30 seconds or less.
Sure.
So part of our MWEBE focus this year is the 20K and under spend. And so we're looking at the commodities that the city purchases on a regular basis, and we're also looking at services. And so I don't know what your 5 businesses are, so how about you share very quickly the name of the businesses, and hopefully I can figure out what you're doing with 5 businesses under one roof.
So none of my businesses...
The IRS going to be knocking at your door. Don't do it. The IRS going to be knocking at your door. Don't do it.
It's none of my business. It's none of my business what their business is.
That's right. So some of my businesses are already licensed by the state, right? So I pay fees to the state for the right to practice. I also pay fees to the city already for a license for that, for what I do for that. What my businesses entail do not have anything to do with procurement or something I can sell the city or any way I can interact with the city. I also don't understand why LLCs and estates wouldn't be applicable.
Okay, if I can answer that. So I want to be very clear in our intent. So if you are operating a commercial business from your home office, whatever it is, the city is not intending to capture a registration for each of your LLCs. Okay, that's not the intent. The intent is if you're a home-based business and that is where your headquarters is located, there are potential costs. If somebody calls our office and says, hey, there have been a lot of cars visiting the Burns residence because she has a lot of clients. Mm-hmm. She has a lot of clients because she does beautiful projects and she's popular. And I will tell you, she does nice work. We have to send somebody out to inspect that. I know that's not a satisfactory answer. And also, I would suggest, argue that you are, just by sitting on this panel, you are a very engaged citizen in an engaged business. And therefore, the information you have access to is well beyond a lot of the others that I'm referencing. So that's our thought on it. We want to use this as a tool to connect people with each other, business to business, our procurement process. We have procurement fairs here that attract several hundred or maybe 50 to the events. We have the potential. We have we're estimating 25 home-based businesses. I think that's an opportunity for them to make them aware of it. I bet we could increase the number of people that come to those events. So. I know it doesn't feel good. I know the idea. I'm not comfortable being at this mic as the economic development manager suggesting that we add more fees to people's lives. It's difficult, but I firmly believe that this is a way to actually help businesses, and maybe that doesn't work for you or Mr. Powell, but I genuinely think it does.
Thank you. Any other questions? If there are no additional questions, then we can move to the discussion on the amendment, unless you want to
Can
make
it be by address? She has 5 businesses out of her home, 1 address, 1 fee.
I would like. It's going to be a little clunky when we launch this. So the answer is yes. That's how I would like to do it. I'd also like to give the opportunity on the initial form to say, I don't believe I should be licensed for the following reason, and have very specific reasons. For example, this is a property LLC. This is a family trust. One of the options will not be because I do not believe I should be taxed. Right. This is going to be a specific reason because we're going to outline the reasons why this is part of our regulation. Sure. But I agree with you, Alderman Rainey. I think you're going to have 1 registration based on the address.
That's fine.
Who goes out now to inspect these businesses if they're not licensed? You were saying that.
I think it depends on the use, but go ahead.
Right. So it depends on, and Director Leonard could back me up on this. It depends on what the issue is.
I think he's volunteering, Paul.
Sure. So we get a variety of 311 requests on any number of things. I think somebody is operating snowplow. My favorite one is snowplowing business, because we get those requests even in the summer. Somebody is doing a construction business out of their garage, auto repairs. So we often send zoning staff out to inspect that, because often some of these things are a zoning issue. If you're running an accounting business off your kitchen table, that probably isn't going to generate that 311 request. But if in April you have a lot of people showing up and clogging up your street, then that might be the case. But generally, it's our first visit is a zoning staff member, and then if there's other work involved, it may be somebody from the Building and Inspection Services Division.
All right. Alderman Wilson, do you mind repeating your motion?
Rewind the tape.
We're going to call the question.
Yeah, okay.
So we can
I move
forward.
that let me just look at the memo so I can tie it to that. I move that we direct the Economic Development staff to prepare a proposal for a business registration program and protocol for consideration by the council.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no additional lights for discussion, we'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
We have 2 nays. The motion passes. The next item is what is that? These are items for discussion. Item A is the Entrepreneur Grant Program Review.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Perhaps I'm out of turn, but I feel like both of these, particularly this item, probably requires some more significant discussion. Does everybody feel like we have time tonight to get into that? I don't want to shortchange the issue, I guess is what I'm saying. It was important that we spend a lot of time on the earlier application.
I appreciate that, Alderman Wilson. Item 4A, I think, does require some, because there's some discussion about some details, and I think at our next meeting it'll be a little shorter. We have a couple of kind of standard funding requests from downtown Evanston and Main Dempster Mile to establish their levies for next year. So if I would recommend that we do that the next meeting.
4A.
So we're going to.
Request.
There's a.
I have a request on 4A. Are you on 4A?
We're on item 4A, and Alderman Wilson is suggesting that we hold that over so that
Okay,
we can
but
give it
may I make a request on it?
I was just getting ready to share if there are any additional
Yes. I have a request.
pieces of information that the committee would like to see baked into
Yes.
the item when it comes back. We can just, starting with Alderman Rainey, followed by Alderman Wilson. Alderman Rainey?
Okay. I would like to have information as to what the outcome has been. For example, we provide software, we provide money for software, we provide this, that, and the other. Were these things purchased? Was there an outcome, et cetera? We never
I would
hear.
agree. Maybe just an update from all the businesses.
Sure,
Was the freezer case purchased?
Sure.
Was air conditioner purchased?
I think you're going to find the answer to that is yes for most of them, but we'll do a more formalized report on that.
Perfect.
But I don't know that.
I understand. Yep.
Any other?
If it's noted, if it's listed in here, does that mean that it's been paid out? So that's
Can I invite Cindy Plan to the dais, please?
Good evening. The folks that are listed in the summary memo are those that have been approved, but not all of them have been paid out. I can point to two of them: the Aviation Careers Network resource, and then the Lashing Out from January were two that were approved for funding, but have not yet submitted payment requests as of this time.
Cool. You can include that in the updates. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, I would like to move forward with item 4B, though. Would you like to make a motion for that?
Oh, yeah. I move approval of that.
It's been...
It's a discussion item for
Very
B.
interesting.
Well, so there's a recommendation for the city manager to look into it a little bit
Very
deeper.
interesting.
Yeah, it's... So we would just be moving that our city manager gives us more information is my take on it. There isn't necessarily an action being taken.
Well, I think it's asking the city manager to have the tax extension office actually make the adjustment.
But then you would have to vote on it, right?
Apparently,
that's not an administration
council
action.
Apparently, council action is not required.
It's just arithmetic.
Right. Chairman Braithwaite, if I may just really briefly.
Please.
We wanted to make sure that you were aware of what we'll call the arithmetic that Alderman Rainey is referencing. It's an administrative maneuver.
Right.
Instead of hiring a consultant to re-TIF or DTIF and re-TIF, it's an administrative maneuver to isolate negative performing pins, to let the positive performing pins generate increment in the TIF.
Right.
That's something we wanted you to be aware of because we had brought this up to you in May that we were going to start a process to try to facilitate some economic development energy in the West Evanston TIF.
Right.
We brought this when we approached our wonderful TIF consultant about that idea. They said, we think we have a better approach for you because you still have another decade on that TIF and it can generate a significant amount of money. So the process is simple. Literally, I could make the phone call to the tax extension office and ask them to do that, and they would do it. The point is, we operate business a little differently in Evanston. We want to make sure that light is shined on the approach. And we have a little bit of work to do to make sure that the other taxing entities are aware of how this will impact them. And, we've provided estimates, and
Right.
that's all we know at this time.
And just so for the benefit of the committee members, so I want to say maybe 3 or 4 months had on our agenda to discuss the West Evanston TIF at Alderman Simmons' recommendation, and since then we've met 2 or 3 times with staff just looking at various options to maximize the TIF in the most efficient way. So this is that option that our staff is recommending based on the previous discussion at the committee level.
Right. So that addresses increment, and we still have the outstanding issue of how do we move forward with development with the existing TIF. The form-based code overlay. That's a discussion for another day.
Different discussion.
But yeah, we'll take that one at a time. But this provides. We think this provides the funding that's kind of missing at this point, and it will continue to be very slow growth. As a reminder, the TIF increment this year in the West Evanston TIF was somewhere in the range of $30,000. Really poorly performing, and there's lots of reasons for that. We've discussed that. Howard Ridge did much better, and we're seeing the fruits of our labor put into Howard Street. And even Maine and Chicago could benefit from this, call it an administrative maneuver or arithmetic.
Thank you. Is there There was a motion, so it's been properly moved and seconded. Seeing no further lights, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion carries unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Communications, monthly economic development. Seeing none. Any announcements or updates from?
But we had the real
members?
estate transfer tax thing.
Oh, excuse me. Yes.
Could I mention
Yes, Alderman Rainey, you have the floor.
On, we have this, we have the referendum coming up on,
That's what we did.
we have a referendum coming up on the real estate transfer tax. On one sale, if that real estate transfer tax item passes, we would make an additional $365,000 on one sale. Just a little tidbit.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no additional items, is there a motion to adjourn?
No, I have an announcement. I have an announcement.
Please.
Thank you. I would like to give a late welcome to Lashed Squared. It is a wonderful beauty business in the 5th Ward at 833 Foster Street, and it's open Monday through Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you. There's, seeing no additional lights, there was a motion to adjourn.
A second.
So moved. All those in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you all.